Well, give James Cameron a call and I'm sure he'll be able to work something out. Seriously, more people need to see this. Once again, continuing where we left off from last week, the Precure had warped back to Earth, but had been followed close behind by the Hoshizora feds and their very long star cruiser. Okay, who are the extra help you have Grant Long on overcompensation? Top Part demanded a talk with the Precure and met them on the planet, thankfully not in his questionably shaped ship, but rather in a smaller reconnaissance ship that looks like a pie tin. Actually, we have seen this sort of ship before when Abraham reported to his higher-ups back in episode 12. Speaking of whom, Hikaru unfortunately ended up roping the poor director into their problems when trying to make excuses for Lala and Prutsu exposing extraterrestrial life to Earthlings. Darn Hikaru, couldn't you wait until he finished work on the last movie in his trilogy? Granted, judging by the script leaks, it sounds like it's going to be an absolute disaster, but still. Yeah, anyway, due to Abraham's actions, Top Part was forced to give a pass to Lala and Prunsu. Well, points to this show for accurately portraying how ridiculously broken law enforcement is. Heck, even the ex-thief is making a face that just says, really? It can't be that easy, right? However, there was still the little matter of the Hoshizora government wanting to recruit the Precure into their ranks. But because of prior commitments, in particular regarding Elena and Madoka, they both declined and took their leave. Jeez, they aren't even being subtle anymore about how detached these two are from the rest of the show. Meanwhile, at the Note Raiders HQ, Darkness, of course, was still staying on his butt, saying he wanted the star pans like a petulant little child, and Gallagher was ordering the other generals to do all the work, same song and dance with you guys every time. Well, actually, Gallagher was going to do something this time, and confront the Precure head-on to take back the other pens and the last hope of the princesses. Wow, like finally, like seriously, Urataros, you really let yourself go after the end of Den-O. Back on Earth, after greeting their families after a long trip, Hikaru played host to Topar and his subordinates. Much like Lala during their first meeting, she offered them some onigi, though of slightly larger size, like seriously, what kind of rice cooker did you use to make that much? Understandably, they initially declined that obsessive amount of carbs. Putting aside the massive size of that thing, I'm pretty sure most people would lose their appetite if you approached them like that, Hikaru. They did eventually partake in them, but damn dude, that can't be good for your sodium intake. I'll just talk about eating got Fuwa in the mood for some food, and as a result, Toppa was able to see firsthand the powers of the Twinkle book. Later that night, he invited Hikaru onto his ship for a little talk. He took her to an observation deck where she could get a full view of the starry sky around Earth's moon. It was quite a view, though as Topar pointed out, it used to be much brighter. Yeah, don't worry about it, Hikaru. It's just a tiny detail that you girls have kind of been glossing over ever since you first saw it all the way back in episode 6. But yeah, this does bring up an issue that several of my commenters have pointed out. The Precure lack any sense of urgency in stopping the Note Raiders. Now in other series, this wasn't that much of an issue as the threat wasn't immediate. But here, major parts of the universe are disappearing. Countless lives are likely being lost, but the Precure aren't taking things all that seriously. In terms of just scale, the threat of the Note Raiders is arguably the biggest in the franchise, and yet for much of the series, it's been put on the back burner. I will say though, this show's lack of urgency is at least the greatest strength of this particular episode, as Topar ended up pouring his heart out over his failure to protect the princesses in a well done scene. I especially love this first person view of his eyes watering up. Thus, he once again extended an offer to Hikaru and her friends to join them, even giving a very familiar sounding speech to her. Hey, good job modifying the Uncle Ben speech and avoiding any sort of contractual disputes there, dude. However, Hikaru didn't have time to ponder his offer as her own personal Blue Goblin had arrived. Hikaru confronted him and gave us our second solo transformation 2 weeks in a row, making me believe that the next few episodes will also have solo transformations for the other 3. Honestly, I'm just looking forward to seeing Elena's supernova transformation again. That was cool. But yeah, Hikaru fought Gallagher, with him taking advantage early on. Their fight eventually moved onto the surface of the moon thanks to Gallagher's warp ability. They continued to utilize to great effect, even redirecting an attack from top of ship back to it. I gotta say, for a character who did pretty much nothing for 30 episodes, this dude was putting in an impressive showing in an epic fight with even some above average animation for the show. Eventually, he completely curb stomped Precure, all while belittling her lack of conviction, which has been kind of backed up by Toppa's earlier words. He even managed to score the last star pen that Kapart had been chasing. Defeated, Hikaru looked up to her home planet and began to realize the weight of their mission and how many lives were in their hands. Okay, I'm actually starting to dig this. Like, maybe this will be the start of a little redemption arc for Hikaru, who will also start to reassess her priorities and work to becoming a better leader and Torrent, you little cotton ball! Yup, the good old Deus Ex Machina baby managed to warp the rest of the team to Hikaru, and all 5 of them rushed the villain. Credit where it's due, this brief fight was well animated. However, after some good old finisher spamming, they managed to short out Gallagher's teleportation bracelet, giving Hikaru an opening to take back the final pin. You know guys, it really doesn't hurt characters' momentum that much when you give them more than one L, otherwise you might end up with this guy. What's especially frustrating was that they even framed it like Gallagher was going to pull off a victory, with the Notarier's main theme playing throughout the latter half of the fight, but nope, after delivering a very unimpressive start pen attack and another pointless speech, Gallagher was forced to retreat as his bracelet also acted as his personal atmosphere. So yeah, the second in command to the big bad of the series lost in his debut fight. Though to be fair, considering that this guy has done nothing for 30 episodes, maybe this was actually a fairly even payoff. Thus, with the final pen in hand, Fua turned into a literal shrimp, and the Pisces princess was revived. With that, the princesses all lined up, with a few of them using their base models ripped right from the toy website to cut corners, I'm guessing. And Prunesu thanked the Precure in a very emotional scene, but was suddenly interrupted by the princesses. Okay, that was funny. Anyway, they asked the Precure to feed Fua for some reason, and thus the episode ended with, well... a cotton ball turning into an MLP alicorn. Well, to be fair, it's not the strangest evolution I've ever seen. While in a bubble, this wasn't really a bad episode, I do think Gallagher's defeat in his debut fight highlights a problem that's indicative of the entire series. Now, I don't think this might be Murayama's fault, it might be an issue of the rotating writers and everything, but there just seems to be a severe lack of any sort of tonal consistency. I will say this, I did end up really liking Toppar by the end of this episode. For a guy I initially made fun of for his design, he won me over by the end with his dedication to his duty. While it was likely not his fault that the Notarators succeeded in their initial sealing of the princesses, as he simply lacked the power to do anything, that fact alone haunted the poor guy. For someone who initially came off as a bit of a stubborn, militant jerk-off type, we can now actually side with his plight and his need to have the Precure on his side. But yeah, let's talk about the Precure. Again, in most other series, their lack of urgency is justifiable, but this episode unfortunately ended up highlighting the scale of the Notarators' threat, and in turn, how actually kind of irresponsible the Precure have been throughout this series. The Uncle Ben speech cannot ring out truer in a situation like this. Then again, the Notarators themselves aren't pulling off great performances either if the second in command loses in his debut fight. A good rule of thumb in writing is not to have one of the biggest established antagonists lose in one of their first major fights. It makes the antagonist look like a chump and robs the protagonist of potential character development. Hikaru has been in desperate need of a wake-up call to turn into at least a little more of a serious leader. We've seen cases like this multiple times in the Precure franchise around the early 30s, where even if the Precure win the day, the new villain manages to achieve at least a minor victory and thus come off as a legitimate threat and even give an opening for the heroine to make a great comeback. For Gallagher, not only has he failed to make any sort of impact in the last 30 episodes, but this was a total defeat. And while it does seem like he'll return next week and might get his win back, the damage has already been done and they failed to strike when the iron was hot. So while top part was great and the fight by itself was pretty good, this show is lacking in more stakes than a cheap diner. Work on the last part of the Hakuto manga review is going well and it should be out soon. I don't want to jinx it by saying it's coming out this week. Regardless, the script is done, and I've recorded most of the stuff I've needed for what has become my personal favorite Precure manga run. So I'll look forward to it, and until then, though, farewell for now, my friends, and what do you guys honestly think about this design? I'll share my thoughts next week, but yeah, I think someone just announced that there wasn't going to be a national Pokédex. Later.